Here lies the headquarters of the United Klans of America, otherwise known as the KKK. This band of loosely organized racist political and social terrorists are known for their horrible acts against people of color. The Klan was formed with the goal of maintaining absolute white supremacy following the newly gained rights of said people of color, following the Civil War. But the people who got the worst were Southern African American people. Their numerous horrible acts were not exclusive to colored people, but also civil rights activists and businesses who allowed or were owned by black people. But enough about the KKK and their horrible acts, because we are here to talk about the woman who brought down the UKA. In 1963, near the beginning of fall, in Birmingham, Alabama, families gathered together for a lovely morning at 16th Street Baptist Church. Early that day, several men gathered and planted 15 sticks of dynamite under the steps of the property. Those sticks exploded simultaneously during the morning service. 4 teenage girls were killed, and many were injured. This is known as the Birmingham church bombing of 1963. Several members of the KKK had assembled earlier that morning in order to plant dynamite under the church. The Klan's influence was so prominent during that time that only one suspect, Robert Chambliss, was prosecuted nearly 10 years later. Hernan Cash, one other suspect, died in 1994 without facing any jail time or criminal charges for his actions. The other 2 suspects, Bobby Cherry and Blanton Jr., were only recently incarcerated in 2001 in an attempt by the state of Alabama to resolve cold cases involving racial segregation and domestic terrorism. Viola Lutzer was a white woman from Pennsylvania, a known civil rights activist who assisted in marches in Selma and offered support by shuttling marchers to and from train stations, bus terminals, and airports. Lutzer was a part of the protests. During March 1965, on the 21st, 24th, and 25th, during the march to Montgomery from Selma, along with renowned activist Reverend Martin Luther King. After the march, Lutzer and Leroy Moten assisted in transporting the marchers and volunteers in Montgomery back to Selma. James Orange, a Southern Christian Leadership Conference veteran and civil rights activist, warned Viola that driving to Selma was very dangerous due to the large KKK presence along the way. On her journey, a car with 4 KKK members pulled up beside her car and shot her twice in the head. However, Moten survived with no physical injuries. Among the 4 men, one was an FBI informant, Gary Rowe. He informed the police on who the other 3 men were and got all of them arrested within 24 hours of the murder. The men were charged with conspiracy to intimidate African Americans and sentenced to 10 years in prison. In 1981, Joseph Anderson, an African American man, was charged with the alleged murder of a white 46-year-old policeman named Sergeant Albert Eugene Ballard 2 days before he was eligible to retire. During a robbery in Birmingham, Alabama, he was tried. In Mobile, where the case had been moved. At a meeting held in Mobile, members of the United Klans of America complained that Anderson was not convicted because the jury had African American members. Benny Jack Hayes, the second highest-ranking official in the UKA, said,
"If a black man can get away with killing a white man, we ought to be able to get away with killing a black man."
A teen boy by the name of Michael Donald was walking back to his sister's house after making a cigarette run to the local convenience store. Halfway there, a car pulled beside Michael and asked him for directions to the local club. The driver pulled a gun on Michael and commanded to get in the car or he would be shot dead. One man got out the rear and forced Michael into the middle between the 2 men in the back. Held hostage, Michael was driven to another county deep in the wilderness near Mobile Bay. The 3 men known as Henry Hayes, James Knowles, and Benjamin Cox forced Michael out of the car and onto the ground. Michael made a final attempt to survive when smacking the gun from Hayes' hand and running off into the wilderness. The 3 men chased Michael down. James tied a rope around his neck. Henry and Benjamin beat him with sticks until he was unconscious. Henry then slit his neck 3 different times to be sure of his death. Michael was dragged through the woods and back to the car where his lifeless body was loaded into the trunk by Henry, James, and Benjamin. The trio drove his body to Herndon Avenue, where Michael's corpse was hung up on a tree across the street from Henry Hayes' home. He was left there for all to see, as if he was a trophy. Local KKK members gathered together later that night and planted a cross in front of the mobile courthouse. The cross was covered in gasoline and set ablaze in celebration of Michael's death. The teenage boy's body wasn't discovered until the next morning by locals. The authorities were called to the scene and removed his body from the tree. When Beulah Donald had found out about her son, some authorities initially argued that his killing was not connected to the KKK and was instead motivated by a drug deal or affair. She disagreed with their racist hypothesis and set out to clear her son Michael's name. She was fully ready to do everything in her power to get back at the KKK. Similar to Emmett Till's mother, she insisted on giving her son an open casket funeral because she wanted the world to see the horror that had been inflicted on her precious son. Beulah, along with a large number of the local black community, protested and pushed the mobile police department not to lose sight of justice for Michael Donald. For more than 2 years, Beulah urged investigators to try and search for the men responsible who killed her son. She eventually met with U.S. Attorney Thomas Figures and the FBI to continue with the investigation. Only then did she get her justice. According to multiple sources, she told the Klansmen on trial, "I do forgive you. From the day I found out who you all were, I asked God to take care of y'all, and He has." And so she had done something unheard of. She was a black woman who fought endlessly with the Klan and won, bringing a huge uptick in equality all around America and making the Klan pay for what they had done. But nothing could fill the hole that was left from her son's murder, because no amount of money could change the past. In 1983, the two Klansmen, Henry Hayes and James Knowles, were arrested and convicted of capital murder. But Beulah was not done there. She wanted to make sure that no other mother or person in general would have to go through her pain. So in 1984, she filed a lawsuit against the United Klans of America in civil court and won. She was offered $1 million but knew to keep fighting them. On February 12, 1987, after 6 years, the Klan was ordered to pay damages of $7 million by an all-white jury, bankrupting the organization. From there, the UKA was forced to file for bankruptcy, and by November 1987, Donald had received none of the money. Donald told the press that, "I wanted to be assured. I wasn't even thinking about the money. If I hadn't gotten a cent, it wouldn't have mattered. I wanted to know how and why they did it." Michael Figures, Beulah's attorney, said that she represented the rock on which all of this was ultimately built. So once again, here lies the headquarters of the United Klans of America, once a band of loosely organized racist political and social terrorists across North America, whom were known for their racially motivated hate crimes against people of color with the purpose of maintaining the long-dead idea of white supremacy that died with the ending of the Civil War. Though the idea still isn't completely buried even today. Beulah had done what many had tried to do before at the cost of the life of her son, Michael Donald, and even though nothing could fill the void left in her heart, she could at least greatly minimize the chance of this tragedy happening to anyone else. And that she did. The UKA was maimed into a former shell of itself. With the news following the outcome of the court case, most followers decided to quit their ideals or move far away where they could attempt to start again. Some chose to practice their ways in isolation, away from the light of modern society, so with its members scattered far and wide with no funding or central body to organize the remaining minority. Beulah had accomplished something dreamed of by civil rights activists for dozens of years, the dismantlement of the UKA in South Alabama.